Hey everybody, first things first, I apologize for the wind. If you hear any, I'm out with my two dogs and I've got a training dog with me. And what I want to talk about today was some important information that I learned, or I guess that I knew, but sometimes it's kind of nice to sit and talk to someone, a colleague in the field, so that you guys can put your heads together and think of constructive ways to make things better for tricky situations when it comes to dogs and their owners. Now, I want to give full credit right up front to Sean O'Shea from The Good Dog. Me and him had a great conversation. It was about an hour long. And he gave me some great insights into some different things. Me and him talked about training and a few different things. And mainly what we discussed was a mistake that I was currently making was caring more than a certain owner cared. And what I mean is I had a tricky situation where a couple dogs weren't quite getting along, and I was brought on in order to help, the situation of the household. And the problems were, two male unneutered big dogs living in a house where they receive no structure. They're held to no accountability, no rules. And more than that, they both kind of obsess over the mom, the woman of the house. And I tried to explain to the owners, number one, I would get one or both of these guys fixed. And number two, even if you didn't, even if you didn't, I would extremely quickly jump onto structure and boundaries and rules and let them know that to be obsessive about the mom, which they are, is not okay. And it's not good for the dogs, it's not good for your owners. And it's coming to the point where one of the dogs even started to growl at other humans as they walked by the mom because he was being territorial, which is definitely not okay, especially when you're working with big dogs like these. Now, I won't get too much into the situation because, the situation is incidental, because this could be you. You can have a very different or very similar situation. The point is, no matter how good of a trainer you are, no matter how comprehensive you are in your approach to training, and just how much you make sure to leave no stone unturned when it comes to getting good stuff out of the dogs, getting some good obedience going, making sure that they're solid even under distractions, making sure that when you're around or when they're with you, they ignore each other and do what you ask them to do, and that they can be at least respectful to each other, because they're not in each other's space, they're both in your space, and I dictate who comes in and out of my space with no lip from either one of the dogs. Metaphorically speaking, of course. The problem there becomes the dogs are trained. The dogs, I've worked them, and they're both extremely solid. They're good enough to the point where I even post them to kind of show them off. But as soon as they go home, there's just chaos. And I've sat the owners down, and I've had several discussions with them about how no matter how much work I do, ultimately you're going to have to get your hands dirty a little too, and you're going to have to introduce and enforce the rules too. Otherwise, they're going to respect me and not you, and the problem with that is I'm not here. These are your dogs, and when I'm gone, I'm gone. And another problem with that is it could come to a point where we get this kind of good cop, bad cop situation going, where they decide they don't like me. I'm just that mean guy that comes over and tells them what to do, then go home. If the owners don't, kind of have my back, and I'm playing by myself here when this is supposed to be a team sport, then it's really easy for the dogs to try to use the owners to gang up on me, almost demonizing me because the owners don't stop them. They can, I can walk into the house and they can just run to the mom thinking, oh no, he's here, let me hide. And the mom doesn't understand that she allows this behavior to continue. So she accepts it. She, lets them do it. And in fact, like most owners, she, thinks she's calming them down when really she's like petting them and praising them for it. So they think it's okay to just run away from me or run away from anyone who tries to give them structure. Now, when I spoke with Sean, we went over what I had done with the dogs just to make sure that the obedience was there, that I didn't skip any steps, that I wasn't trying to jump ahead and push the dogs, further than they were currently ready to handle. We went through all the obedience. We made sure that I did everything correctly, and he told me, and it was refreshingly honest. He told me, sometimes people make the mistake of caring more than the owners care. If you're doing everything by yourself and the owners aren't helping you, then there's just a no-win situation. And if you want it more than they do, or if for whatever reason they can't make this mental adjustment for the dogs or for themselves where they need to put structure on the dogs, then there's almost nothing that you can do. And it puts you in a tough spot because you don't want to like quit on the owner, but there's really kind of no way out. So he suggested, try to get them to understand, and if not, you might have to move on. And I think that was great advice, because as harsh as it may sound to some people, it made perfect sense to me, and I didn't think it sounded harsh at the time, but I could see where someone would have a problem. But the thing is, I believe that in anything, when you're trying to help someone solve a problem, you can only help someone to the degree that they will accept your help or that they want your help. So I'm not going to sit there, and spin my wheels with someone when there are so many other dogs with issues with owners that are willing to do the work in order to get the dog better. And that's the sad thing is, your time is limited. There's only so many trainers out there that deal in aggression, and there's so many dogs out there with issues. There's so many dogs getting put down every year. And it just sucks that when you're stuck fighting this uphill battle, it could be done. I think the worst part about it for me while I was doing it was just knowing every day, like a few weeks in, that this would have been done already if it were anyone else. If the owners were willing to do the work, then 3-4 weeks and you can churn out dogs, and it's really not out of the ordinary. Most rehab programs are about 4 weeks long, but these owners were really slowing me down. The dogs learned quickly. The dogs are smart, but they're very pushy, very bratty, very very kind of complacent when the owner's around, and when the owners aren't around, they couldn't be more excited to see me and to get working. But as soon as somebody comes in, where they see one of the owners, they're immediately back to their bratty little ways. And it's just one of those things where I can't crack into them from the outside, so to speak. I can't tell the dog to stop obsessing over someone else. That someone else needs to be the one to demand their own space from the dog and kind of create a sense of individuality from the dog. It's not the dog's job to protect that person, but I can't come in as an outsider and express that to the dog in the way that it would understand. Now, if I were able to do this with the owner, then they ideally would start crating the dogs at night, would start, pushing boundaries, would start demanding respect, would start holding the dogs accountable for bad behavior, especially toward each other or other people or other dogs. And with that in mind, when this owner is physically exercising the acts of being in control, then the dogs would feel less and less in control. I mean, they'd have to. How are you going to feel in control if the owner is physically controlling? It's in the act of doing. So I try to get them to understand. Sometimes I would get them to go in kind of little bits and pieces, and ultimately what it turned out being was, I kind of had to sit them down and kind of throw the gauntlet and say, hey, look, if you can't do what you need to do, then I can't even sit here and continue to just get paid by you. It's unethical. I can't do it. That was, advice that was given to me by someone else. And if this isn't going anywhere, I can't just sit here and spin my wheels. It drives me crazy. Now, for anyone listening, I'll jump off my little soapbox and talk about my story, and I want to get to the main point, which is if you care more than the owners care up front, some great advice that I was told was, when you first meet clients, when you're first interacting with each other and meeting the dogs, be very realistic, be very upfront with what it's going to take from the owner. So even if you do something like a board and train, be very upfront with, hey, look, once the dog goes home, I'm going to need you to do this, this, and this, and I'm going to need you to be consistent, and I'm going to need you, to stick to it, and I'm going to need you to not falter. I'm going to need you to not get lazy, because if you do, the dog's going to slide backwards like anyone else would, and that's no good for him, that's no good for you, and that's, frankly, a waste of all of our time. So if the owner expresses some sort of, aversion, or if they're kind of unsure about that from the get-go, be very straightforward with them. Okay, look, you know what? Then take a week or whatever you need and let me know when you're absolutely sure. Because if you're not in it to win it, no matter what I do with this dog, it's not going to work. The dog's going to learn and adapt and then go home back around old triggers and familiar things, and it's just going to slip right back into its old state of mind. So directly up front, make sure that you tell the owners, look, I will do this, this, and this, of course, but I'm going to need you to do these other things, and I need you to understand that this is your dog, and after I train him, it's back to you, and it's all on you. If the dog continues to grow, or if the dog starts to, kind of fall backwards, that's on you either way. And I'll teach you exactly what you need to know, but I still need you to do the work. That's number one. And number two is make sure owners understand why and what the importance is. I've had lots of owners be a little weary about like prong collars before I even got into off-leash training with e-collar. And I try to explain to them, a lot of them, mind you, have had other trainers, like all positive trainers or whatever the case may be. And they don't believe in the prong collar. So I sit down and I explain to them, here's the thing. I understand that you believe in these methods and these tools, but I think it's obvious by now that these things aren't working, that your dog needs something different. And I'm not saying that positive training doesn't work, but it doesn't work every time, and this is obviously one of those times. So if your dog needs a different approach, I can offer that different approach, and my approach gets results, but I need you to do the work. So if people can't open up to that, and they often do, I mean, as training goes along and they see the dog start to improve, because it happens fast. The dog gets better, in a day, in a few days, and then in a few weeks the dog is, is pretty solid. But if they're not kind of jumping on board, then, those are the types of owners that are just going to kind of waste your time, and you're like output with the dog, if that's the way to put it, kind of as good as the dog churns out, a lot of it depends on them. And as good as the dog behaves, a lot of it depends on them. So keep that in mind when you're talking to new clients or when you're dealing with clients that you've already had, that you've had kind of limited success with. I was really stressed out. It honestly made me kind of second guess my skills as a trainer, because these dogs seem to be so good until they go home. But sometimes everyone needs that little pep talk from someone who knows dog training, and to let them know, look, you can be doing everything right, but you're fighting an uphill battle, you're fighting a losing battle. This is a team sport, and I'm playing by myself. And not only am I playing by myself, the owners are playing directly against me. So if you find value from this, I'd like you to just keep in mind, I'll try to make this nice and simple. So, I like lists when I listen to podcasts, so I'll try to list it out. Number one, make sure owners know this stuff up front. Number two, if they're not okay with it, then quite frankly, tell them, come back when you are. I can't, there's nothing I can do. It's not that I refuse to work with you, it's that I can do it anyway, and it's just not going to work anyway. So it's unethical for me to just take your money, knowing that if you're not going to do what you need to do, my job's not going to be done, at least not correctly. And number three, don't second guess yourself as a trainer. I think that it's great to be able to reach out to other trainers and not feel like low, or not feel like it's a failure for some reason. We're all doing the same thing. We're all in this together. And, one of the greatest pieces of human achievement is the fact that we can kind of get together and talk about these things, kind of compound our interest and our experiences and our insights, and decide what the best approach is moving forward. That's kind of why we all do what we do. So don't be afraid to reach out to someone, be it me or Sean. He was very helpful, very friendly. Anyone else, there's lots of guys out there, Jeff Gelman, there's lots of people I don't know about, even all positive trainers that, it's nice sometimes to get that other opinion. I like Zach George, and there's other people. Don't be afraid to reach out. We're all in the same field. We're all after the same things. If these people know something that I don't, then I'd be a fool to not at least try to learn something from them. So this is going to be a short episode. I'm going to end it right here. I just thought I'd leave that little snippet of information. You guys have a great day. Be safe with your dogs in the heat. Make sure they get water, but not too much, or they'll throw up. My secret is I let them drink for 10 Mississippis, and then I stop them. And I might even do that a few times if it's really hot. So I'll let my dogs drink, 10 Mississippis. I stop them. 40, 50 seconds later, whatever, I'll do it again, and then we go out. You guys have a great day.